I would say sort of laying even more of like a general foundation about all that. What, and I especially, I mean, I'm sure it happened before this, but going to other cultures as I do as an anthropologist, part of the motivation there is I want more tools for my toolbox in terms of how I see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know, because the way each of us culturally, whether, and there's so many ways to look at us as cultural beings, whether that's as, say, an American, a New Englander, a woman, that it's a nesting doll of ways that we, relate. And so going to other cultures, seeing how in one culture, something that I consider a problem may not be considered a problem there. And may have ways of looking at the world through a new window that then makes me go, oh, okay, I've been going around my life thinking this was a problem. Maybe it's not really a problem, or maybe it's not a problem in the way I think it is, or maybe it's a problem that actually has a fairly simple solution. So I think, in order to draw back the blinders, I believe one has to become really comfortable with ambiguity and with dissolving the mind in some ways.
Which is interesting too, not to cut you off, Hillary, but like there's such a dichotomy in that and I relate to this a lot, so maybe I'm projecting on you, but like it's rooted in a search for answers. But what you find is that you have to be comfortable with ambiguity. And there's something in that that's so beautiful, but so frustrating in some ways, right?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, in a way, I would almost say it's not a search for answers, it's a search for expanding the questions and the possibilities. So I would say in a way, maybe I don't like the word answers, because at least the way we use it, that's a declarative statement. And I think we've become so obsessed with declarative, unyielding answers that we've forgotten to ask questions. Certainly our social media, 150 characters or whatever it is, world does not help in terms of opening up possibilities. So, really and one can go, maybe I go to another country and I ask a question about something that I've been working on, and they give me an answer that I'm not comfortable with. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean I have to then change my mind about how I was feeling about it before, but just to have that little crack in the cosmos that maybe there is another way of looking at it. Not that you necessarily have to, but considering the possibility of multiple perspectives and multiple options.
So let me press on that a little bit, because I think what you're saying to me makes a lot of sense, and like logically, philosophically, it makes sense. But like, if we follow the thread, right? So exactly what you said, you can go to another culture, you can ask a question, you can get an answer that doesn't make sense for you, and you can process that by saying, okay, there's different perspectives, there's different ways. There's some people that would hear that and say, like, well, then what's the point? Because if it's always, if there's no declarations, if there's no clear answers, if what you're finding in all of this is that there's not a first principle root level piece to it, there's just infinite different ways it can be done, then what's the value in it? And that's ironically why I named the podcast what I did a little bit. Like, what still makes you feel like, no, there's something that's positive? Like, what is it giving you in life that makes you feel like it's worth it to do this?
Well, who knows? Maybe there are first values. Maybe there is a absolute truth with a capital T of reality out there. I'm not convinced we're ever going to find it. And, this is, a metaphor that's sort of been overdone, but it's that whole, like, the blind man with the elephant, and everybody's feeling a different piece. I think that's where I come at it. So if there is an absolute truth, which maybe there is, I have no idea. There probably is, because maybe on one level there's got to be, but then again, I could argue that point too. I don't know. But the idea that any of us little humans have the absolute truth complete in our minds, in our souls, in our hearts, I can't quite buy that. I've never met anybody who I thought came close, and including myself. I am so far from having any idea, which is why I'm, this is my value and my passion. So I do think that we all are looking out of our own little windows at a very valid perspective on the world, but it's not the only window in the mansion.
Yeah, and there's value. There's value in just accepting that, I think, right? Even if the conclusion to it is like, well, I only have this window. I can't look out of a different window. And I would argue you probably can at least start to get a little different perspective.
Yeah.
But I think even the realization of that this is just my window. It doesn't mean it's right. It's just the window that I have. Something in that is useful, functional, powerful, important. And I think maybe that gets to the answer too, of like, even if that's where it stops, I think we're better off as people if we can accept that, at least, right? Is that kind of what you found?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think we can also go, and this is where, again, I feel like this is what happens on a metaphorical level when I'm doing my anthropological work, is I'm going over to somebody else's window and they're kind of putting their arm around my shoulder and going, hey, look at that, look at that, look at that. And I'm like, hey, cool. I've got a totally different perspective.
Talk to me about that sensation, because I as you said that, I feel it physically.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome. That's such a cool thing. Yeah. What does that feel like for you when you get to do that? Is it just excitement? Is it interesting? What is it?
Oh, it's, can I just say it's orgasmic?
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, it is for me, it's a little mental orgasm. I mean, to see the world and I am somebody who enjoys sort of having my mind and my ideas deconstructed. Not everybody is like that. Lots of people do not like that feeling of almost chaos. I live for it. And yeah, there's something almost anxiety relieving to know that you've got more tools in your toolbox than you knew you ever had, because we get in ruts of thought. And if you have somebody pulling you over to the window and going, hey, this is another way you can actually look at this thing that's been agonizing you for years or something, let's say, and suddenly the sun comes out from the clouds, and there's the